Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this postmortem of my Blitz game number 899. I had the black pieces and my opponent started off with e4. I went with knight f6, the Alekhine's defense. And he chooses to play the main line, well, one of the main lines, the 4 pawns attack. So I go knight d5, go c4, kicking it again. This move, c4 and d4, those two moves can be played in either order. Because after d4 I'm not going to be moving my knight away but playing some other move like d6. And then here's the kind of dividing line. The way I play as white, well to start with actually I used to play this move f4. It's kind of the most aggressive way to play against the Alekhine's defense. But I found out that I got into trouble. It kind of leaves a big air gap around the king there, and the bishops can come out and poke into that area. And if you're not experienced, you can get into trouble. But in fact, it's quite a reasonable move. So it's just easier to play with e takes d6, after which black can take back with either the c pawn or the e pawn. Lately, I've been experimenting as black with taking with the c pawn. Anyway, that's not how the game went. The game went, I went d6 and he went f4. So I don't see this too often. I've played the Alekhines for a while. And usually they choose to play this e takes d6 line at this level, or in the games that I've seen. So I got the first move right, you take. I'd seen this much before, and I remembered you just try to start softening that up right away. Normally white takes with the f-pawn. The idea in the long run is to castle kingside and maybe get an attack along the f-file. That's one of the ideas. And then knight c6 right away. I wasn't sure about this, but knight c6 right away attacks this pawn, and it's not getting pushed forward because the e pawn is hanging. So this is a convenient time to bring that knight out. And let's see, after knight f3, I guess that can cause some trouble, the pin against the knight, although I think it was actually playable too. But bishop e3, I just want to show the main moves. Then bishop f5, which I played in the game, and now knight c3 and e6. And this is a position we could have gotten into in the game. I had a chance to get back to it, but anyway, this is how the main line would go. Let's see, did I follow that any further? Well, one more move, knight f3. And seems like a reasonable position. White is better. White has the bigger center, but black still has ideas of counterattacking. This bishop might relocate to g4 at some point, and this bishop might come out here. And well, although it typically goes to e7, but anyway, that's not how the game went. The game went, I played bishop f5 immediately, which is still in the opening book, so haven't really done any horrible blunders here. And after this move, well, after he plays knight c3, once again I could get back into the main line here with knight to c6, bishop e3. This would lead to the same position we saw before, so that would be a reasonable way to play. Another idea here is to play bishop to b4 because of the different move order. It's maybe an interesting move to play at this point. I didn't like this because the bishop was going to get forced to trade. I mean, after a3 here, kicking the bishop, it doesn't really have anything good to do, and it just trades itself for the knight, and I wasn't sure that was a good trade. So I was trying to get some kind of improved version of this, but I forgot after I played c5 that I blocked the bishop, and now I no longer have the possibility of playing bishop to b4. So just a blunder on my part. And at this point, white is much better. The chess engine says white is basically winning, giving it a evaluation of around +2 or +3 for the next quite a few moves, up to about move 17 here. So white did all right here, and I was hanging in there. I wasn't making any more mistakes. It's just that c5 move that I just played is a big mistake. So anyway, taking here is the thing to do. You've got to try and soften things up. Also, you need to try and find squares for your pieces. Try and soften up the center and find squares for your pieces. I mean, the compensation in the Alekhine's defense is that what it's supposed to be is that you're supposed to get counterplay against the center by attacking it, and you're supposed to have active piece play. So that's what you should be looking for here. And I did a reasonable job at this point. It's just that white has an advantage to start with and keeps it. So let's see. He went knight. Oh no, it's my turn. I went knight to d7, getting my pieces out. He went bishop to b5, getting his pieces out too. I kicked it. He just dropped back to e2. So that didn't accomplish a whole lot, but it was no harm done. He still got an advantage. And now I played the move c4. It looks a bit unusual, but in fact I think it is a good move because it gives me this c5 square that I could use for either the bishop or the knight. You know, I just didn't want to play my bishop here to e2 and have it kicked by the pawn immediately. It might even get lost there. So you know, you don't want to be playing another pawn move at this point when you haven't even castled, but it seemed necessary in this case. So yeah, white has a big lead in development at this point on top of everything else. But I do manage to get castled with tempo by throwing in this check and castling. And so at this point, white still has that big advantage of around +2 or so. Now the chess engine would continue with a normal developing move like bishop to f4. And it also has the interesting idea a4. Maybe trying to make my pieces uncomfortable over here. Probably I have to play a5 to stop it, and that maybe will create some weaknesses over here. He can drop his knight into the b5 square, for example. So those are ideas. He went knight d4, which is not as strong, at least at first glance, but it does seem to keep an advantage. And well, the chess engine prefers that I just retreat my bishop here. It still gives over a +1 advantage to white there, and after this trade, it's back in the +2 range. So an exchange of minor inaccuracies there, and he's still, you know, up in that +2 range here. So the move I was expecting here in the game is I was expecting him just to take this pawn, and I had spotted this idea that I could play knight takes e5, and at this point the game is actually about even. I've finally gotten rid of that annoying pawn duo there. I have squares for my pieces. He's got an isolated pawn here, but it's under threat, and you know, I have good chances of recapturing it. Let's see. Yeah, in fact, the material is even at this point. So you know, I have it is about even overall, I guess. The material is even, and my pieces have squares, so I'm doing okay. But the way he can keep an advantage at this point is to just drop his knight back to f3. Just defend this pawn, hold on to that big center, and now I can try, say, knight c4, but he can defend with rook e1, still holding on to that pawn, just maintaining that advanced center, and I can't easily undermine it. And this pawn can be picked up, you know, at white's leisure. He doesn't need to really rush to pick up that pawn. So that would be best play for white, and white would still have a winning advantage there, I think. But instead he played e6. You know, it's always tempting. I'm sure every move white was evaluating whether he should push on with e6 or d6. But this is just bad timing. It's not a big enough threat. He left his knight hanging. Maybe he missed that his knight was hanging here. I don't know. But I mean, it's not that he loses a piece, but after this exchange, the material is even here. Yeah, for the moment the material. No, I'm actually a pawn up, aren't I? Because he hasn't recaptured here yet, and I'm going to stay a pawn up. Yeah, so I'm a pawn up, and my pieces have been liberated. So yeah, it was just a mistake. The e6 pawn he ended up losing, and that's why I'm a pawn up. And now he can try and get the pawn back, but it turns out that just by force here, by taking the knight and then grabbing here, I stay a pawn up. So he's gone from being you know, almost a winning advantage to where black has the advantage of just a pawn. If he plays carefully, it's not necessarily a lost game at this point. Anyway, he went queen g3. This is okay. I went queen h5. You know, I had spotted this threat. He's threatening to play bishop to h6 there, and if I push the pawn forward, he will grab the rook and win the exchange. So typical tactic. The chess engine much prefers queen c6, defending bishop h6 this way, and also looking at the pawn. You know, I still kind of like this move. It's not maybe the best, but I do like putting my queen over by my opponent's king. I mean, as we saw in the game, it creates these tactical opportunities. So maybe it's a good practical move, I guess, even if it's not technically the best, and keeps some kind of advantage. And after queen c7, yeah, he's losing the thread a little bit here. Although, well, he spotted an idea, right? I have this loose knight and pawn over here, so he's trying to pick them up. And it turns out I have counterplay on his c3 pawn, so he doesn't actually win a pawn there, as we saw in the game. The chess engine would play with rook b1. You know, the queen is doing a good job over here defending, and why not use the rook to attack? And white still keeps an advantage. I think I can manage to pick up a pawn, or maybe I just have, he gets the pawn, but I have active pieces here. Anyway, instead of rook b1, he played queen c7 with a similar idea, but now I can move the knight, attacking the queen, attacking the pawn. So he grabs the pawn. There's really nothing better there, and I get c3. So he finally gets his bishops developed, and he is poking at my f7 square. He's got the rook and the queen lined up against it. Fortunately, my queen over here is also defending it, so I was able to move my rook away. But actually, that was something I had overlooked, so it was a bit of a good fortune for me. So I chase his queen. That was a reasonable move. He plays his queen over here to e7, and I play knight e2. This was also the best move. The chess engine liked this one. The knight is threatening to come in here to g3 and fork the king and the rook, taking advantage of the pin on the h-file. So he spotted that idea and defended with queen c7, but it's not the best defense. In fact, he's actually losing after that. So I had the advantage up to, well, since his previous mistake, I've had the advantage, but after this one, I'm just winning. So he could defend with queen e3, just defending along the side, and you know, the queen is also looking this way, and it's a good central location for the queen. So it's not easy for me to chase the queen away from defense, which is the problem with putting the queen on the diagonal. The other idea is to defend with rook f3. He didn't have to move his queen at all. He could lift the rook. This is actually the move I was expecting, and then he could maybe double here. And the chess engine still gives a slight edge to white here. I mean, to black. So I still have an advantage here, but it gets tricky for me. I was a little bit afraid of this idea, and I'm not sure exactly what I would play at this point. But anyway, he went queen c7, defending along the diagonal, and then I can just chase his queen off the diagonal. He went to e5, and I took it. But, well, the only other square he could go to, he could go here or here, and if he goes here or here, the knight takes it. If he goes here, the queen takes it. Here and here are covered by the rook. So the only other square is queen to d6, and I can chase it like this and like this. And there is, and so it looks like I'm just winning here because I'll have this fork at the end. But there is this crazy defense. You know, I just thought this was interesting. The chess engine can find all kinds of resources. Rook to d1. So this presents a real quandary for black. If I take the queen, he takes my rook, and that is actually mate. And if I take the rook, queen takes rook, and that is also mate. So I have to be precise here. The move knight g3 check seems to be the way to play this. And then rather than retreating the queen, he just moves the king, and now I can play queen takes rook. So we'll see how this all works out. For the moment, I'm a rook up, but my knight is hanging, and my queen is hanging, and his queen is hanging. So he can play queen takes f7 to get his queen out of trouble with check, and then he can take the knight. But at the end of all this, I save my queen, and if we count up the material, the pawns are even. His king position has been a little messed up, but I'm up the exchange. I have 2 rooks, and he just has 1 rook and a bishop. So I still, if I could find all of those moves, I could still be ahead here. Of course, it's I don't know how likely it is that white would find this rook ac8 move, or this rook a d1 move. That's a bit tricky. Anyway, let's go back to the game. Yeah, he just played queen e5, and I took, and he resigned here. So it was an interesting game. Hope you guys enjoyed this postmortem, and I will see you guys later. Bye.